Hi, so this is a video really about or kind of referencing a comment that somebody left on my last video, which was about the muse. What is the muse and what effect that it has on the creative experience. And it was such an interesting comment that I thought I'd make a whole video about it. But basically in the comment section he'd put, this is John, so thanks John for your comment. Interesting interview. As to whether the muse is within or without, would you entertain the notion that you're dancing along the edges of consciousness and where our memories and thoughts are stored and processed? I thought that was really an interesting way of looking at it. That kind of imagery of dancing along the edges of consciousness. But I guess what comes up in my mind is that maybe there is no edges to consciousness. And that our memories and our thoughts, I think we're using our memories and our thoughts and our feelings to kind of paint the picture. But I think the initial spark, I mean, it's really hard to say where that initial spark comes from, because I think it comes from so many different things. So yeah, I wouldn't describe it as dancing on the edges of consciousness. I would describe it as that place that it's coming from, if you want to call it consciousness, is kind of always there, and it just depends whether there are other things kind of in its way. So I think it's looking at the things that are in its way that creates more of an opening for that, for I don't know, the creative spark, the creative energy. And then you put, experiments with certain worms have proved that you can cut their heads off, and they still know where their food is located. Other folks will assert that we are all part of one God consciousness, and so there's a good case for the muse being a curious external superpower. Yeah, this is really interesting as well. The cutting off of worms' heads. I really liked that. Yeah, that's really interesting, isn't it? That you could chop their heads off and they still know where their food is located. I can't answer that question about the worms. I don't know. But it's really interesting. But I think the one God consciousness, I'm definitely in agreement with that. There is definitely one God consciousness. And because there is one God consciousness, it can't actually be external to ourselves. It has to be, so where you've said being an external superpower, I was kind of thinking that it can't be an external superpower. It has to be an all-encompassing power, if you want to call it a power. But yeah. And then you were talking more practically. So the songwriter is always reaching into the unknown, within and without, trying to understand emotions and explain them. Almost if we put two and two together and get fireworks, or vice versa. Yeah, I think this is also part of the muse, or the creative expression, or I don't know, whatever words you want to use. But yeah, like sometimes when I've written lyrics, and I think actually this was with the song that I wrote, Tap Dancing to the Blues. So I had like a really generic line when I first started that song, and and a lot of the lyrics were quite generic. And I kind of thought at the time, oh, this song isn't really going anywhere, which again is, you know, some of those negative thoughts that can come in when you're in mid-flow. Because I had something along, you know, something along the lines of dancing or something, and I also had in another line tap dancing, and in another line something about being sad, or you know, whatever. And then suddenly I just looked at it and it just all kind of fell into place, and suddenly it just became tap dancing to the blues, which you know was one of those lines that kind of sprang out of nowhere, and kind of one of those lines that says a lot in just a short amount of time, which I kind of like. So yeah, I don't know. I hope this kind of answers some of your things as a kind of discussion point, because I really like these kind of conversations. But also I was thinking about, you know, the muse. I mean, there are things as well that externally that can influence you, and those experiences go in and somehow end up bubbling up again as something more. But I think, you know, what I was saying before about the muse being internal is, I think whatever it is always going to get filtered through your perception, for one, and yeah, your thoughts, your feelings, your memories, which I guess is part of your perception. But yeah, thanks for the comment anyway. Take care.